I'm here with Manjit Singh from One Immigration. We're at his house in South Knighton, and we're going to sink our teeth into the subject of immigration in as far as COVID-19 is concerned. But before we get into that, Manjit, tell us about your beginnings perhaps in immigration law.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Kevin. I started doing immigration in 1982. I actually started in Coventry, which is my hometown. And then I moved to Leicester in October '84 to work for a law centre here. And I've practiced immigration law continuously since. I was fortunate to work in Manchester for the Greater Manchester Immigration Aid Unit. And I was head of an immigration department, one of the largest solicitors' immigration departments in the Midlands. But I've always had a strong connection with Leicester, so I came back to Leicester in 1996, and I've been working here ever since. I've had my own law firms. I'm currently practicing at One Immigration Limited.
One Immigration Limited, London Road, right here in Leicester.
Yeah, which is a great city. It's a great city to practice immigration law. Leicester's got an amazing population, so you have to learn a lot about nationality law to practice immigration nationality law here. Because of the East African Asians, the people of Asian descent who came from Africa and their complicated nationality matters. So you have to really specialise in nationality law. It's a very big thing in Leicester.
You've touched there on multinationality, Leicester being a multicultural, a very diverse city, and already buzzwords like Africa, India here, there. In as far as immigration law is concerned, in as far as immigration perhaps, I'm just going slightly off track here, but you know, in line with the national conversation, BLM, what would your comment be?
Yeah, obviously it's very relevant to immigration nationality because historically legislation has been racist. When you go back to the first immigration control, I mean, immigration control is a relatively recent phenomenon. The 1905 Aliens Act, that was targeted to Jewish migration to the country, where Jewish people were trying to escape pogroms in Eastern Europe and they were being stopped from coming here. And some of the things they were saying about Jewish migrants, they were saying about the Asian migrants in the 60s. And then you have in the 1960s when Asians who had British passports wanted to come here because of the Africanization policy in African countries, they were being stopped from coming here with the Commonwealth Immigrants Acts. So there's always been this undercurrent of stopping people from coming here. There's been historical injustices. There was the UK was found guilty of race discrimination in the Ugandan Asians cases in the 70s. So then you go to Windrush, the terrible things that have happened to victims of Windrush. People have been deported, deprived of work because of the hostile environment. So it's all related to Black Lives Matter. It's all about respect for different people, respect for people who've contributed to the UK in world wars, contributed towards the economy and the culture of this country, and they should be accepted. And immigration laws are of paramount importance to showing people that they are rated, that they are respected in the country where they live.
Well, the topic of the day, Manjit, the switch to a long-term UK visa with regards to COVID-19. What's your advice for UK visa applicants and temporary UK residents?
Right. And let me explain this. I think there's a little bit of misinformation going around. It is correct that until 30th of July you can switch from a temporary visa to a visa that leads to settlement. That's been the case since COVID issue came in. But you have to satisfy the conditions of that other visa. So if you don't satisfy the conditions, there's no point applying, you're going to get refused. It's also very expensive. So take the case of example of somebody who comes here as a visitor. Suddenly to want to switch to a spouse, you have to meet all the spouse requirements, the language requirements, the financial requirements. Or a parent who's come as a visitor and now wants to apply for settlement. The actual settlement rules for parents are very, very strict. They're the strictest rules possible. It's very expensive, and most people are likely to be refused because the rules are so harsh. So I don't want people to think, oh, this is fantastic. It's only if you meet the criteria for your next application is it worth doing. And I've seen some correspondence, some hits on the website saying that you can get citizenship. Well, that's very far off. You can only get citizenship once you get settlement. So first you have to satisfy the new requirements of the category you're applying, then stay in that category for a number of years, normally at least 5 years. In the case of people who are applying to stay here based on their family, the human rights situation, it's actually 10 years. You have to wait another year, then apply for British citizenship. Then you got the test for British citizenship. So it's not easy.
You said a lot there, and perhaps we might be hard pressed for time for you to really unpack everything. But in a nutshell, what should the masses who may be watching now be conscientized about when it comes to perhaps WhatsApp group hoaxes about immigration or misinformation?
Yeah. Always seek advice from reputable advisor. Don't listen to rumours. Be very careful about what is being put out of WhatsApp groups. That would be my advice. Check the advice out very carefully before you decide to do anything, especially before you depart with your money. Because unfortunately there still are many con merchants out there who tap into people's insecurities, give unnecessary hope where it's a difficult rule, don't explain the rules, and take the money, and there's no comeback on them. Always make sure the person that you instructed is regulated by a regulatory body. So if something goes wrong, you can complain about them, and that body has insurance which will cover any negligent advice.
I think the biggie right now obviously is COVID, especially considering that our city, Leicester, has seen a spike in coronavirus. My question to you then would be things like the English language test and Life in the UK test. Are these centres in the UK resuming services?
Yeah, they're slowly resuming. If you've not been able to get an appointment to complete these, still make your application and tell the Home Office you're about to sit the test. Obviously you've got to be confident that you're going to pass the test, and nobody should be prejudiced by the fact they're not being able to do the tests. I mean, the Home Office have consistently said no one will be prejudiced by coronavirus, their immigration status. So even if you haven't passed the test and you say you're applying for settlement, but you've got a date after your visa expires, apply and tell the Home Office you're going to sit the test, and you'll send the test results to them once you receive them.
I'm perhaps getting emotional, which I shouldn't, because I'm really meant to be impartial in these interviews.
Yeah.
But I think it's an open secret to all those who know me that Manjit Singh was very helpful in securing or helping me get sanctuary in the UK. Not only me, but a lot of members of my family here in England. What has been your experience of maybe Zimbabweans and people from other countries who may be fleeing persecution, who may be wanting to settle, especially now during this era?
Yeah. Well, I had a look at the country report on Zimbabwe this morning, and there are still possibilities of getting asylum from there. If you're returning to Zimbabwe to a rural area and you can't show allegiance to MDC, there is still difficulties if you're seen as opposing the new presidential regime, but obviously it's not as easy as it was when Mugabe was in power and he was crucifying the opposition.
Tier 1, I paraphrase that, Tier 2, 4 and 5, these tier groups, what are the implications, coming back to the subject of coronavirus, what are the implications for people who are perhaps applying under those tier conditions?
Well, the Home Office have made provision for people who can't continue to satisfy the requirements. They've also said that employers can't satisfy their statutory duties, that because of coronavirus, they've made rules, temporary rules, permitting people not to be affected by all the disruption caused by COVID-19. So I don't think anybody should unduly suffer. Obviously, if people lose their jobs, that's a different kettle of fish. Then there's going to be difficulties for people, or if they can't afford the fees for college. They're going to be the real problems.
My social media is going alight with people, my compatriots and just other friends inboxing me to find out about a whole lot of things, and one of them when it comes to immigration is when they're working for the NHS.
Yeah.
What impact is that going to have on people working for the NHS but not fully settled or not having indefinite leave?
Well, rules have been put in place that certain categories of NHS workers can automatically get extension for a year.
But certainly not carers.
Not carers, unfortunately.
What are your thoughts on that? Because the bulk of...
Yeah, I think that's it's very controversial. I mean, care workers are skilled workers. There's a shortage of them in the UK. I don't think local Labour want to do that kind of work, and we've been reliant upon people from abroad doing care work, so there'll be a real dearth of people available to do that work. And there's been so many casualties in care homes, so it looks like that sector is in a real difficulty. I think the pressure being put on the Home Secretary to include them and make it easier for care workers to come here from overseas.
Right, speaking of overseas, Manjit, what happens if you're presently outside the United Kingdom? I'm sure there are changes at the border because of coronavirus. What do people need to know?
Well, if you've got a visa and you can't travel, your visa will automatically be extended till the end of the year. There'll be no extra charge. The British High Commissions and embassies are slowly opening up. The Home Office are also making different arrangements in terms of receiving documents. And what you're doing now, you make applications rather than having to produce them at your biometric appointment. We are finding that sometimes they're asking us to email them. Yeah, so that they're looking at different ways of operating to keep the cases going along.
What about a more urgent case? I'll give you a scenario, a case study. If you have, say, a 30-day visa to work, study or join family and that's expired, what goes on then?
In the UK, well, if you can't travel back to your own country, you can apply for an extension. You can email the Home Office, but you have to show why you can't go back. And also, I want people to be careful about this because this hasn't come out yet, but it will come out later. This is for people who eventually want to return to their country. This route, yeah. It's not a route for somebody who gets the extension then applies for settlement. So I think the Home Office will turn around and say, well, why did you apply for an extension? You had no real intention of going back to your own country. So this might become a problem area. So it's only there if you want to travel back to your own country but you can't go back because of travel restrictions, because of lockdown measures in your country or whatever.
Manjit, is the guidance different for, say, fiancés, civil partners, or proposed civil partners during this time of COVID-19?
That's a separate category. They've been affected and the people have been losing their jobs or been furloughed, but the Home Office just recently come out with a very good policy that they'll take into account their income as of, I think, in March when the COVID issue developed in this country, so they're not going to be at a disadvantage because they've been furloughed or they've lost money. So they'll look at the income at the time when COVID issue started. Apart from that, the rules are still the same, but it's difficulty with the High Commissioners and embassies being closed, not being able to do language tests abroad, and not being able to go along to biometric appointments. But that's slowly changing. Things are opening up now.
And what's the status quo when it comes to changes in minimum income or adequate maintenance during this very confusing time of COVID-19?
As I said, the requirements for spouses, fiancés, civil partners is 18,600. If somebody's lost their job, if somebody's lost their job or been furloughed, you can count their income back from March going backwards. So they won't be disadvantaged. The pre-COVID issue income. So they won't be disadvantaged.
So just to sort of summarize this, your advice as One Immigration on visas and entry clearance, international travel, immigration and repatriation perhaps during coronavirus. What's your take?
Right, always seek good independent legal advice from reputable firms. Look at good websites, Free Movement, Immigration Law Practitioners Association, reputable organisations to get the information. Sometimes you have to interpret what you receive from the Home Office to understand it. And the government has said that people should not have been disadvantaged because of the COVID. Bear that in mind. I think that will become very important in the coming months when people start getting refused. You'll be able to argue, well, I'm at a disadvantage because of COVID-19. If you really are being disadvantaged because of that, then there should be a remedy for you.
Manjit Singh, it's been an absolute marvel talking to you. You're a joy to chat to. And in summation, where can people get hold of you if they want to come to you?
Right. I practice immigration law at One Immigration on London Road. I've got a team of really good specialists who specialise in immigration law. Have a look at our websites, One Immigration Limited, we're on London Road, Leicester. Our telephone number is 016 255 2110.
And a word to our Golden Careers Champions fans who may be watching the programme from your heart, perhaps to theirs. What would you say?
Oh, it's just fantastic. Get the message across. We want to cut through all the mysteries and confusions. I think it's a great job that you're doing, getting out to the communities, and I support you wholeheartedly.
Thank you much. You heard it there from the man himself, Manjit Singh from One Immigration, which is based on London Road here in Leicester. I've been chatting to him in his living room here in Knighton South. My name is Kevin Mube, and thank you also to our director, Sigli Ahmed, behind the glass. It's been an absolute joy once again talking to you. Stay safe.